What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. I'm gonna give some time for people to matriculate into the chat here. What's going on? Again, I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. What's up, brother? I see somebody in the chat. I'm giving it a little bit of time for some people to matriculate into the channel. What's up, Infantry Skills? How you doing, brother? I see you already got some commentary to jump off with from the jump. But I'm gonna give a little, a couple more minutes for some people to matriculate into the chat here. What's up, Evan Duncan? How you doing, man? Derek Holmes, how you doing, brother? Leroy Honeycutt, my fellow St. Louisan, what's good, brother? I'm just gonna withdraw for a few more minutes and see how many people I can get to matriculate into the chat. All right, so let me go ahead and get this started, man. What's good, Cameron87? What's good, boy? 14395. Before I begin, I want to say please support the channel if you can. The Cash App, or you can hit the Super Chat, whatever your preferred method is. We all need some support here, man, with these channels, man. We black men, and we're trying to do this crucial work. And the work is necessary. Right now, it's early in the formative stages. It seems like everywhere we turn, masculinity is being attacked. Black men are being oppressed by a dominant superstructure. But when we try to articulate our concerns, our experiences, our vulnerability, and what's going on with us, we're told we need to be quiet. You're mansplaining. You're misogynistic. You're engaging in misogynoir. You don't protect us. You're not loyal to us. You're savage. You're a rapist. You're an abuser, a brutalizer. I mean, we hear these tropes again and again and again and again. And it seems as if our voice, our politics is not brought to the fore. Thank you very much, my brother Leroy Honeycutt. Appreciate that donation. I want to say shout out to Kimite Gaming, Michael Harper. But everywhere we turn, as soon as you even try to articulate a thought, that thought is stymied, is thwarted, is put on the back burner because you've had your say. I mean, how many black men have to die? I mean, recently we just saw another brother get killed. This brother had some psychological issues, and instead of, this brother being treated like a dignified human being, you had white police officers laughing at him. Again, the knee on the neck. They put a spit bag over his head, pushed it into the asphalt as his life expired. And those officers aren't going to see any significant impact on their livelihoods. It's just not going to happen. It happened in Rochester, New York, from what I understand. But we're being told, just be quiet, man. Just vote for Biden and Harris because, we need to get Trump out of office. So anytime we have something to say, there's always an excuse to put our issues, our specific needs, what's relevant to our experiences, we have to put it on the back burner. Again and again and again and again, it's not the time. Right now, it's not the time for y'all to be upfront and to speak to your issues. And look, I don't have a problem with good cops, man, out there doing good work. But you got a bunch of people, man, out here who, for the most part, they don't care about black life, specifically black male life. We already know what the statistics bear out. The statistics bear out that black men are killed at 20 times the rate of black women. Every year, there might be 5 or 6 black female deaths related to police violence or police killings. But when it comes to black men, what you get is somewhere around 200, 250, sometimes near the 300 mark. And so when we talk about our issues, we're told we need to be quiet because we need to make black trans women feel good about themselves. And they're dying too. Now, it's true that black trans women are dying at high rates relative to their population. But last year, I don't know, maybe somewhere around 30 trans women died. So that puts the marker at around somewhere around 25, 26 black trans women have died in relation to the 250 to 300 brothers that have died because of police violence or any other kind of violence. Not to mention the other forms of death that black men experience and the environmental and the social conditions which give rise to them. We're told, not now. It's not time for you now. It's time for, some other demographic to lead or to rise up. And that you're an oppressor if you're a black man. You're patriarchal. You're toxic. It's always something about us that's, dysfunctional. There's always something about us that's unjust, while we suffer from the most horrific conditions that men have ever been subjected to. But we're just supposed to be quiet about it. I'm telling you right now, you do not need permission to speak. People will tell you that you need permission to speak. You don't. You need no permission to speak at all. None whatsoever. Period. You don't need permission to speak because they're not going to give you the opportunity to speak. You've been silenced on purpose. That's part of the politics that have been imposed against you to keep you quiet, to keep you subservient, to keep you in a state of catatonic shock where you don't know what to say or what to do. You don't have any ability to express your thoughts, your views on a whole host of political issues. We don't have a political agenda. Our political agenda is a flat black political agenda, not gender specific, just a flat black political agenda. That needs to stop, needs to end, come to a close, put a cap on it. It's now time for us to talk about our issues, and nobody's coming to save us but us. We all we got. We're all we got. The black people in the LGBTQ community think that black men, heterosexual black men, are a problem. Black women who are feminists think black men are a problem. So while we suffer, I mean, essentially what I'm thinking is our suffering is good. Our oppression is great. The least amount of them you have, the least amount of oppressors you have, right? Let them deal with their issues on their own. And the schematics about this, but recently there was an article written about Black Death, and they had pictures. You can go look at Dr. Tia Johnson's latest video, and on that video, he kind of highlights and showcases at a certain part this article, and it's like a series of photographs that a brother created, a black man, highlighting the impact that black male death has upon black women. And you got, you know, pictures where the black men are like laying limp while black women hold them like children, even like adult men. Adult men. It's like you don't even have the ability to speak about your own issues, your own problems. That's never, ever, ever, as far as I can recollect in history, that's never been done. Ever. Where a group of people who have been subjected to horrific forms of violence to be told you don't have the authority to speak on it. You don't have the right to talk about it. I've never, ever in the history of politics ever heard that viewpoint espoused. Please, will somebody give me some historical event or period in time where a group of people who have gone through what we've gone through don't have the capacity or the ability to speak about it at all? I'll wait. If at any point you can conjure up that kind of thought or that kind of political maneuvering, such that the very people who are subjected to the most overt forms of violence and oppression don't have the capacity to say anything about it because it's politically incorrect. If that's politically incorrect, I'm not politically correct. I'll never be politically correct. But see, this starts at youth. All of this starts at youth. Black men have been trained since the 70s, 80s, throughout the 90s, the 2000s. We've been taught you got to be quiet. You have to defer to other people's politics because they're more oppressed than you are. They're oppressed along more planes and intersections than you are. So, for example, if you got a gay black woman, she's more oppressed than you are because you're a male, and men are afforded privileges in this society and in this culture, which is androcentric. So therefore, you need to be quiet. No, we don't need to be quiet. Who said we had to be quiet? Is there some rule? Like, did freedom of speech all of a sudden become curbed? See, black men don't want to offend black women or white women or white men for some reason. We don't want to be offensive to anybody. We don't feel like hurting people's feelings. This idea of chivalry, man, it is deep, deeply ingrained it's almost indelibly ingrained in who we are and how we operate in the world. But if we're so busy protecting everybody else and their interests and their concerns and trying to be so liberatory, who's going to look out for us? Who's going to look out for us but us? So the time is now to cease and desist with all of the pandering, the caping, the virtue signaling, the grandstanding. It's time to put an end to it. Look, I commiserate with what women are going through, but if a woman wants to cut me off and tell me you can't speak because, you know, the women, then I got a problem with that because they're not listening to us. If you refuse to listen to me and what I'm going through, then guess what? You're disrespecting me. You're disrespecting me. If you refuse to listen to anything I have to say about my experience related to death, dysfunction, and dis-ease, and oppression, and domination, and exploitation, then we got a problem. And I don't care if I hurt your feelings. I don't care. They've had 60, 70 years to talk about their issues and to highlight their own concerns. But, you know, the problem I have with this whole mode of thinking is that, and I highlighted this in my last video, the last series of videos, actually, maybe the last 2 or 3, where I pointed out this is how they sidestep the need to have to interpolate Black men's concerns and thoughts and expressions into their politics, because they've come up with this conceptual norm whereby if their oppression is alleviated, then everyone else's oppression will be alleviated by default. Now, if you want to understand the reasons why I say that that's erroneous, ideologically, you can go back to the last video where I detail it. It's about 3 or 4 ideas that I come up with that tries to illustrate that if like Black women are free, everyone else is going to be free. If that's the case, then why aren't we experiencing more pronounced levels of freedom as Black men right here and now, if that's the case? I'm just saying, if it's the case that if Black women are free, then everybody else is going to be free by default because they're more oppressed than any other group, then why don't you see a decrease in Black men being killed summarily on the street? Why don't you see that? Why don't you see increased levels of flourishing and functioning and thriving amongst the Black male population? Why don't you see more Black men with advanced degrees matriculating from high school into college as functional adults? Why don't you see it? I mean, in real time, we can see the matter of fact contradictions related to that ideal. It's a hypothesis, it's a theory, but it's a political theory that they have adopted for themselves in order to justify decentering everybody else but themselves. So if it's the case that you are the canary in the coal mine, you are the universal negative subject at which all oppression is directed, then you don't have to pay anybody else any political attention at all. Your own son's death become the catalyst for which you to talk about yourself. I don't even see Black people in the media, academia talking about this. I mean, sporadically here and there, but you don't see on a come on now, shorty. Come on now. At some point, you got to let me have the mic. You can't have the mic all the time. You can't have the mic all the time. All the attention can't be on you all the time. That's vanity. That's narcissism. That's narcissism, man. Where everything is centered around you, everything is about you, ain't nothing about nobody else but you. It's all you. Me, 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 me. Me and more me. Man, we're dying out here. To Carlos Jones. I want to say shout out to other brothers in the chat here. Adam Williams, what's going on? Women having their own voice and being able to express themselves. That's not what I have a problem with. Voices. That's nonsense to me. I don't buy that. That's oppressive in and of itself. That's taking us out of the political, out of the domain and the realm of political, and saying, we're your stewards, we're going to handle it, we got your back by default. And at the same time, what are they doing for us? I remember, man, one day, man, like, okay, so there was a conference I was attending, and there was a black feminist there. And Dr. Johnson talked about this in his last show also, where we were talking about this initiative of the Brothers Keeper program, right? And, you know, the idea is, okay, well, black men are hemorrhaging. They got a lot of social problems. Let's set up some sort of initiative where we can actually address and somehow rectify some of the issues that they're experiencing. That woman, man, the first thing she went off into was, well, what about the women and the girls? What about the girls and the women? Now, we already know that black women are doing better than black men in a whole different set of ways. They're not being incarcerated as much as black men. They're doing better in the educational system than black men. They're not being killed to the same extent as black men. They live longer than black men. They're subjected to less violence than black men. They're doing better than we are on a whole lot of levels. And maybe they're doing worse in some ways and on some levels. But the whole point is, when is it ever part of democracy to be able to tell somebody that whatever it is that you have to say, it's unimportant right now because we're more oppressed than you? Huh? Huh? Like, I just don't understand that. That is anti-democratic in and of itself. Whenever it is the case that you make it a point in your politics to decenter voices of other oppressed people because you've categorized them as oppressive, that's a problem. Conceptually, that is a problem. That's a foundational problem of their politics. And I'm through with it, man. I don't care who I offend. I don't care who I get upset. I don't care how backward or regressive they say that I am. I just don't care anymore. I don't care. Why should I care? You don't care about me. If I'm dying and you're telling me that while I'm dying that I'm an oppressor, and when you develop a rally, and then that at that very same rally, you're talking about, well, you know, black men are dying, but you know, look at the trans women that are dying. Why ain't we at the location of a trans woman's death then? Why are we not there when that's happening? Why not? We could be there, couldn't we? Why are we not there? Why are y'all not there? Why are you using our deaths as a springboard for gender politics? Black men need their own agenda. We need our own agenda. our own politics. Now, let me just say this. I don't know what you think democracy is, but and I want you to narrowly define. I'm gonna give you the opportunity, some of y'all, to come on here and to tell me what you think democracy actually is. Because I want to know what you actually think about it. What is democracy? What is politics? What is democracy, man? And how do you know you actually have it when you see it? How do you know you're at it or have met the demands of democracy? And how do you know it when you see it? Because I would think that if you, as a matter of principle, decenter another person's voice, that's anti-democratic by default. That's anti-democratic by default. Now look, my brother said mob rule. Okay. Well, that's a literal translation of the word, because ocracy, of course, means to rule, and demos, for the most part, means the mob. So there are some people, it's a word that has origins in Greek, because demois means mob, and ocracy, of course, the suffix means rule. So that's what's going on there. And look, I don't have a problem with women who are black or gay or a combination of all of them being able to express themselves politically. That's not the problem I have. What I have a problem with is while they're articulating their politics, they're telling us, be quiet. Says who? Under what authority? The only reason that black men are doing this is because apparently they're either virtue signaling, grandstanding, or they're afraid because they don't want to get shamed or canceled, or they situations. Men don't have the ability to tell women no, or to tell them when they need to be quiet. Apparently, it's very easy for women to tell us when we need to be quiet. They've been doing so for the past, 60 years. Be quiet. Go sit in the dunce chair. Be quiet. You had your turn. Be quiet. We next. Be quiet. Now they're telling us that if we don't vote for Biden and Harris, that somehow we're being traitorous in relation to race. But the Democratic Party hasn't provided black men with any kind of tangibles since when? The 60s? What is the Democratic Party doing for black men? At all. The last time I checked, every major policy that benefits women have not really actually been extended to men in any substantive or significant way. It's true, black men can get SNAP benefits just like women. But be honest, how often do men get these benefits? And then if you got 1/3 of the black male population who have been incarcerated and who have been stigmatized by being labeled or characterized as a felon by the system, a lot of times and in a lot of states, you can't even get those benefits. You can't get them. You can't get food stamps if you got a felony, especially if you've been dealing drugs. You can murder somebody and get some food stamps, but if you sold a $5 piece of rock and they caught you doing that and you got convicted for that, you can't ever get food stamps. I mean, let's be honest. Section 8, how many black men have you ever encountered in your lifetime who came to you and said, look at my crib, bro, I'm on Section 8? I know dudes who had women that had Section 8. I ain't never seen a brother who's on Section 8. How many black men do you know, get WIC vouchers? I ain't never seen a man get no WIC vouchers. I've seen men go to the grocery store on an errand for their women who got WIC stamps. I done seen men buy WIC vouchers and stuff like that and use them at the grocery store. I've never seen a dude who got a WIC voucher, man. So what? The nutrition and the health of black men is of no import? And I understand it, man. Look, I get it. I understand a man is supposed to go out there and get it. I get that. I understand that. I do understand that. I get it. But damn, what if you fall on hard times and you need some assistance? This society doesn't provide the means by which men can be brought up from a level of impoverishment and be uplifted. This society is not providing the context in which black men who are suffering can be given a leg up through government assistance at all. And you know what the funny thing about it is? If a black man has a job, see, a lot of women are, coming up with this trope that specifically about black men that we don't protect and provide for them. We pay taxes, don't we? How many of you have had jobs for the past 20, 30 years? I mean, for crying out loud, every time a woman goes to spend some money on food stamps or Section 8 or with a WIC voucher, I'm paying for it. I pay my taxes. They take them out of my check every month. I'm paying for that. If I'm paying, I should have some sort of say. And if I fall on hard times, I ought to be able to receive the same kind of benefits that any other human being should be able to receive. Right or wrong? Or you supposed to go out there and get it? See, in the 30s, they had the Great Depression. And they created, the government did, subsidies to improve the quality and the conditions of white people's lives. Men and women. It wasn't just, okay, we're going to help single mothers out. They helped everyone out. It's called the New Deal. But the New Deal had an end in view. They created infrastructure projects and they put men to work. They gave them housing opportunities and infrastructural opportunities that weren't extended to black men. Look at this, man. I want to put this up here because this is important. There's a brother in the chat right now named Bert Johnson, and he says, I'm a single dad and my wife passed away. I got 2 kids. He says he once met qualifications for EBT and voucher. And it was an older black lady that denied him. See, this is what Dr. Tiasan Johnson talks about when he talks about a black buffer class. See, I'm guaranteeing you, man, there are a lot of women out here with the mentality that a black man doesn't deserve a handout. He needs to go out and get it by the sweat of his brow. He's got to pull himself up by his own bootstraps. The only people who are supposed to be provided for are women and children. But what happens when you're disenfranchised? What happens when there's outsourcing of work? What happens when the labor pool is no longer an American labor pool, but a foreign labor pool? What happens when the work becomes more and more mechanized and computerized? And that you got an entire population of black men who don't have the requisite skills to enter into that market. Because we have some of the worst schools in the country with the worst kind of tax base, which was created through housing discrimination. And it's still going on. Look at the wealth gap. The average black family, when they die or, have something to pass on, They only have like about $3,600 to pass on to their posterity. That's ridiculous, man. The average white family has somewhere around $130,000, $140,000. Now, this is not all white people. It's a lot of white people suffering out here too. Okay? A lot of them going through it, just like black men. But overwhelmingly, where would you rather be in relation to wealth? Wouldn't you rather fall into that curve, that bell curve, where it's a high likelihood that you would have $120,000 to start with? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? I want to also thank the brother out there, Mr. Meach. Thank you very much for the donation. And also, I want to give a shout out to Warren Thompson. Thank you so much for the donation. Brothers, please support the channel, man. I'm out here working. I'm a starving artist. So make sure you support the channel if you can. You can hit me on the Cash App, $G with a PhD, or hit me in the super chat. But I'm not going to detail the dimensions of the agenda itself. I'm just trying to provide the framework philosophically and politically to justify us putting aside this notion that we're being backward politically. We're being politically incorrect if we look out for our own political interests. I mean, have you ever heard of the strategy called tit for tat? How many of you ever heard of game theory? Game theory is the theory of strategic decision and choices, where you want to have an optimal outcome when you make decisions and develop strategy in a whole host of institutions. Like, for example, economics. It's the logic of strategic decision when it comes to economics, game theory. How to reach what they call Pareto optimality. How to arrive at a situation where no one else can do better off unless someone else is doing worse off. But we're not using game theory because we're worried about everybody else but ourselves. And in the long run, that's not having an optimal, that's not creating an optimal condition for our community. Because I'll tell you this, unless everybody's interests are absorbed into the public sphere and we're having a real dialogue, nobody's moving forward in our community at all. And if there's a sickness in one part of the community, all it's going to do is fester and rot and have an impact and an effect on other members of the community. I just don't understand what people don't see about this. I just don't understand what people don't understand about this. If it's the case that you got black men who are dysfunctional and they're having interactions with black women, why would you want dysfunctional black men? Why would you want that? For the sake of having honorific status above and beyond them? That's nonsensical. Look, let me tell you something. Anytime you have a member of your own community who is refusing to allow you to speak, they're basically ostracizing you from that community. They're partitioning you off from the community. They're saying you ain't part of our community. They're saying you're not part of our social body. You're too regressive to be a part of our progressive politics. That's anti-democratic. I ask you what democracy is. I still haven't received a satisfactory answer. So let me go into this, man, because I've been kind of just winging it. But I want to talk to you about what I think democracy is, okay? Now, when you think about democracy, people routinely think of it as a form of government where people rule themselves through voting. That can be either direct or by proxy. So when you have institutions that are arranged in such a way that the citizens vote directly, it's supposed to be a direct democracy. But when you got a society that's arranged in such a way that the citizens govern themselves indirectly and you elect people to do it, that's considered to be a representative democracy. Now, this is a theory. It's a theory that can be used to categorize and to identify pre-existing and standing democracies, which are either more or less direct or representative. Now, I don't know if you know, again, like just going back to it, the word democracy is drawn from a Greek concept, the mob, the rule of the mob, okay? That's where it comes from, all right? That's where you get it from. So this government is really not set up like a democracy like people think it is. It's not. This is a republic, like the Roman Republic. This is not a direct democracy. It's a representative. If it is anything, it's a representative democracy that built into it looks out for the interest of people who have wealth. Bottom line, that's the way this system is set up. In case you didn't know, this is not a democracy, a direct democracy. It definitely is not that. What do you think the Senate is for? Why do you think you have a Senate and a House of Representatives? In Britain, they have a House of Lords and the House of Commons. This system is set up in order to mimic that. So the senators are supposed to be the wealthy land-owning class, and then you got representatives who are supposed to be regular, people who aren't as wealthy and privileged as those persons making decisions. It's supposed to be some sort of parity, but within the system is already built in more input on behalf of people who have wealth and affluence. It's already set up that way. And it's inefficient for a reason. That's why you got the system of checks and balances. You got a president, you got the judiciary, and then you have the legislative branch of government. It's all set up to be inefficient. And that nothing happens quickly. But what happens when you got a system like that you don't even participate in other than through voting? And by the way, black people only got the right to vote the black people been able, 55 years, the black people been able to actually vote. How's that working for you? How's that working for you? And even while you vote, you're not even part of the agenda. Even while you're voting, you're not part of the agenda. That's the crazy thing about it. Even while you are voting, your interest are not being absorbed into the decisions that go on within the context of the House of Representatives or the Senate or the presidency. Look, you had a black man in the White House, and what did he say? I'm not just black people's president, I'm everybody's president. Then you got Kamala Harris that recently said, when asked the question by an interviewer about what kind of policy specifically she was going to institute to help alleviate the problems that black men have, and she made a comment about, well, all men. I mean, we just can't look at black men. We got to see what is happening. And I get it. I understand it. That's political speak. That's basically saying I can't alienate white voters. I can't alienate my white constituents, my white male constituents. Because everybody knows, look, everybody knows in this country, and it's the unavowed premise underlying everything political in the United States, bro. Keep the black man down at all costs. Kill him, incarcerate him. He's a danger, he's a threat, he's a savage. Lock his ass up or kill him. Nobody cares. Hit the nigger baby. Kill the nigger baby. Feed him to alligators, hit him with a baseball, hang him up from a tree. Whatever you do, keep that nigga down. And if we even try to talk about how we experience the world, we're told to be quiet. What the fuck? If we're quiet right now, we may as well go ahead and hang ourselves, bro. We may as well hang ourselves. Because nobody's going to do our work for us. At one time, we had a coalition of others who were in alignment with our ideals, and they didn't mind our leadership. And it wasn't as if there weren't black women also leading. It was just that the women hadn't made a conscientious decision to say, hey, you're oppressors, you're sexist, so you need to be quiet. They've made that choice. And then they shame us. They use shaming tactics in order to try to keep us quiet. And I understand it, but this ain't the 60s. This ain't the 70s or the 80s or the 90s or the 2000s. We in 2020 right now. This is 2020. I'm not trying to hear that shit anymore. I'm just not trying to hear it anymore. So when you start thinking about democracy, so I'm basically saying, look, most people perceive democracy as a voting procedure to tabulate the fixed interest of private individuals. Bottom line, that's how most people perceive voting or democracy. Democracy is voting. That's not democracy, man. That's not what democracy is. Now, one could argue it's a crucial component of what democracy is, but that's not democracy, man. That's not. Just going to vote and punch a card at a ballot box and you don't even know anything about these candidates. You don't have the ability to have access to them. You can't influence their policy. They have no concern for what issues impact or affect your life. How's that democracy, man? How's that democracy? I'm here to tell you, man, I'm not going to say all, but a great portion of the founding fathers of the United States did not want democracy at all. Especially direct democracy. Populism, they did not want that. James Madison, Federalist Paper number 10. This man argued, democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have been, in general, short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. Now that's James Madison, one of the founding fathers. That's his idea about democracy. Alexander Hamilton, another founding father, during a speech where he was trying to ratify the Constitution, basically said the ancient democracies in which the people themselves deliberated never possessed one good feature of government. Their very character was tyranny, their figure, deformity. John Witherspoon, one of the dudes who founded Yale University, basically says, pure democracy can't last long, nor be carried far into the departments of the state. It's subject to the caprice and madness of popular rage. Now, these are founding fathers and what they're telling you about democracy. And then the economist's opinion about democracy, it's not more flattering either. There's a Austrian American economist by the name of Joseph Schumpeter. I mean, he basically says, look, ordinary citizens, they don't have the capacity or they don't have the responsibility to make complex political decisions. They just don't know. They're inept. And then he said the average citizen is uninterested in politics to begin with. And when he actually is interested in politics, he's easily exploited and manipulated. So, in the best case scenario, hand over the reins of government to an elite group of statesmen and limit the scope of citizens' involvement in electoral politics. That's all we need for them to do, is to go and vote for the changing faces. They really don't need to be making complex political decisions. They don't know what they're talking about. They're uneducated. I mean, that's basically the sentiment. And not only that, you got social choice theorists. I don't know if you've ever heard of Anthony Downs or Robert Dahl, but they're social choice theorists. And they say, well, the political process is just like the economic process. And democracy and populism is not good. So basically, they say the political process should be modeled after a competitive process in which individual citizens each seek to maximize their own utility and actualize their interest through the logic of strategic decision. Active citizenship has no value, no intrinsic value, and citizens are like voters. They don't have to be actively engaged citizens. They just need to be passive voters and do what we do every year or every 4 years, every 2 years in cycles when we vote for local, state, and national politicians. Just that's the scope and the range. And then, you know, the funny thing is Black people are caught up in this cycle, man. Today's Black politicians and social critics, even the people who participated in the civil rights movement, characterize democracy as social choice theorists do, as consumer-like voting. And I don't have a problem with voting. I don't. But that's not democracy. Because the extra constitutional actions and measures taken up by the people in the civil rights movement and the abolitionist movement, that was democracy. One could argue that what you see in relation to the uprisings happening about Black men being killed, that's democracy also. And it has the possibility, the potentiality to impact decision making. But guess what? Game recognized game. That movement has been co-opted primarily because Black men haven't had a voice. See, a social movement has to be grassroots. The civil rights movement was a grassroots movement. This movement is not a grassroots movement. Black Lives Matter is a pre-established movement developed by Black feminists, namely the women who devised the Combahee River Collective Statement. That's what BLM is about. Now, one could argue it means different things to different people. It could be the case that that's true. But generally speaking, that movement has its aim and its goals predicated upon the Combahee River Collective Statement document. That's what that is. That's why they keep talking about trans women or LGBTQ people or trying to decenter Black men or trying to do away with the heteronormativity. If you tell me that I can't be a proud Black man and be heterosexual, fuck you. Go eat some pussy somewhere. I mean, I ain't stopping you from doing you. Go do you. Go eat some muff. I mean, I hate to say this, man. I'm saying this is straight no chaser. If you want to eat some pussy, go ahead. Do you. But don't tell me I gotta date a trans woman in order to not be transphobic. Fuck that. If I want a woman, I don't want my woman to have a 9-inch dick, man. Black men do have a voice. They can talk, but they don't have an agenda to talk. You got a whole bunch of random men saying individual random shit. He says, I disagree. Black men have had a voice, but black men cannot have a voice without putting money in like the women and IQ, and whites do. You're leaving that out. Black men don't want to financially put money in. I disagree. Black men have had a voice and so on and so forth. Look, black men do not have an agenda. What's the black male agenda? Where's the black male manifesto? Where's the black men's statement? What is it? Reparations? Is that the fucking black agenda? I mean, it could be part of the agenda, but God damn it, reparations ain't gonna stop motherfuckers from getting killed in the streets. Come on now. Where do you see black men talking without being ridiculed and shamed for talking about their own issues and their own interests? Huh? Where do you see it? Where do you see it? The civil rights leaders had an agenda. Before they even went in to start marching, they already knew what it was they were trying to accomplish by going out there and marching. We don't even have an agenda. This is just pure reactionary and performance politics, man. And that's the reason why it's been easily co-opted, because there is no goal. It's like the Occupy Wall Street movement. No leadership, no structure, just a slogan, the 1%. The 1%. And people out in tents. That's not good enough, man. That's not good enough. Anytime you have a movement, you have to have a movement towards something. That's what a movement is. When you move towards a goal. Otherwise, you're not moving at all. You're just randomly walking around. That's wandering. It's the difference between moving and wandering. You can't have you can talk loud as hell, but if you're not saying anything, what are you talking about? Black men aren't even, this right now, this space is consciousness raising, is what I would consider it to be. Here you can raise consciousness so that you can develop an agenda, so that you can create a strategic movement. That's what it's for. But it's not to just talk and get emotional. At some point, I'm pissed off, man, because I see how this system churns black men into sausage to be eaten up by anybody else but ourselves. Everybody else is able to talk about our deaths and use them as a platform for their own feelings but us. That's a problem, man. That's a problem. You know, the funny thing about it, it took a black woman to write a book about mass incarceration called The New Jim Crow for anybody to even say some shit about it. Think about that. Think about that. So this woman is going from spot to spot to spot to spot. Now, she ain't never been incarcerated. And look, I salute the sister. Thank you for at least bringing the issue to the fore in the public sphere. I appreciate it. But damn, don't you think you need to hear from black men themselves about what the fuck they going through with the system? I need a black woman to speak for me about the injustices related to the criminal justice system. I mean, come on now. Why do I need to have somebody speak for me? This is not how business used to be conducted amongst black men. It wasn't like this in the 60s. This is some relatively new shit. This is brand new, man. You don't need permission to speak about your issues, bro. You don't. You do not need permission to speak about your issues. They will try to silence you and shame you and make you defer to their authority. You do not have to. Who is paying the gas? Man, look here, bro. Let me just say this. Who's paying black men's gas? See, if you want to get on here, I left the link. Real talk. I'll leave the link again. I told you before, black men pay taxes. Black men make more money and work more hours than black women. So all them fucking subsidies going to black women, black men paying for the motherfuckers. Now dispute that. Who paying the gas? Now, if you got a black woman on her own, I can't tell her shit what to do in her own household. That's on her. I'm not trying to interfere and tell black women what to do. Do what you do, but don't tell me I gotta be quiet. Now you can get on here and debate me if you want. Get your ass on this format and say what you got to say. Say what you got to say, bruh.
I come in peace.
Get your ass up on it. Get your ass. Come on, man. Let's get it.
Hold on for a minute. Let me mute the other thing so that way you don't get the echo.
All right.
All right. First of all, I come in peace. But
peaceful then. Well, my whole thing is, look, brother, before you begin to speak, this is the black manosphere, okay? And I know you know that because you're here, right?
I actually helped create it. I was the one of 4 people.
Okay, I get you, brother. But you know that, right?
Yes, sir.
And so me speaking as a black man, what I'm saying is that black men recently, I'm talking about within the last 60 years, have not had the ability to be a part of the black public in a substantive and in a meaningful way. And that needs to stop. And if it doesn't stop, black men need to engage in agonistic politics, meaning it doesn't matter, no holds barred. Because if nobody looks out for our interests but us, well, that's all we have to work with. If you don't want to make me part of your politics because you don't consider me to be a part of your social body, then I have to go out for myself and do what I feel is best for myself. Right or wrong?
Yes, I agree with that part.
Because my thinking is, if you have already, and maybe you came in later, thank you, Unreasonable Man, but what I know for a fact is, in the 1960s and the early 70s, a conscientious decision was made by black feminist lesbians. And they said, we are going to do what is in our best interest politically. So we're going to fight on 4 fronts. They're going to fight on the front of class. They're going to fight on the front of being lesbian. So that means they were going to fight heteronormativity. Then they said we're going to fight class and race. So you got race, sex, class, and heteronormativity. Those are the 4 fronts that they said they were going to fight on. Okay. Now, to me, if you look at what's transpired, many of these women, they might give voice to talking about race, but a lot of these women are married and coupled up with white folks.
True.
Now these are supposed to be the radical women of the vanguard of achieving or attaining racial justice. My point is they cashed into the neoliberal dream with politics that's milquetoast, bruh.
Let me get a piece of the mic.
Go ahead, bruh.
Okay. First of all, to the brother in the chat room saying I'm a troll, no, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, which is have an intellectual conversation with Green Gorilla. You feel me? That's what you need to do instead of hiding in the chat room. You need to have intellectual conversations with your brother. So here's where I disagree. First, let me give you the credentials of what I do. I've given like 15 G's over the past 10 years to men's rights group. And here's what we achieved with that. We got a law passed in Tennessee, Chicago, and California to stop females from abusing men with these Ronald Reagan laws. Ronald Reagan passed a bunch of laws in 1986, which was a windfall for women. So really, if men would get together like I have done with their dollars and eradicate some of these laws piece by piece, we can have exactly what you want. Here's another thing. Let me say also to the brother saying I'm a troll. Name calling is what women do. Men have intellectual conversations. We talk about mathematics and stuff. So you sitting up there in the protection of the chat room is girly. Now back to what I was saying, Green. I'm not disagreeing.
Look, I applaud you on that. And look, I'm gonna let you speak and get it all out so that I could, kind of answer. But like I didn't know where you were coming from. You see what I'm saying? Like I felt like you was coming from the status of or the position of, that women are doing tremendous things.
Oh, hell no.
And that like men are doing like a whole bunch of lip servicing. And look, I agree with you because let me just say this. If black men could come in and devote to this some donations to this show, they can pool their money together in order to try to lobby. It's possible for that to occur. That's possible for that to occur.
That's what we originally started the Manosphere. Me, Angry Man, Minister Jap, O'Shea, and the dude who we had to kick out, Hardcore Tito. It was all about working together, but then it got into just people complaining. But let me just say this though about what you're saying. I totally agree with you. Back in the 60s, when brothers was giving black women jobs, when the doctor was hiring his black woman to be the nurse and the secretary, when the dentist was hiring his black woman, hell, the Pullman union for cable car waiters created the first national black woman's. I said this at a speech that I did for the black nurses union. The Pullman brothers created the first national black women's economics conference. We've always been helping our sisters, but you are right. Just when the right to vote came out, then all of a sudden these suffrage white women who would never hire our women other than to sweep on the floor, I'm proving part of your argument, who would never hire our women, all of a sudden went to the young 18-year-old going to college woman and got her to thinking about woman only, not about her people, woman only. While that white woman only thought about Irish, and that white woman only thought about being a Polish or a Jew white. That's all. See, they have a flag. We don't have it. So they went to our woman to get her on this women thing, but then they left her in the cold because in 1950, 1960, there were no black women in the office working with those white women who say they cared. I'm proving your argument again. They had to get black women working in the basement and not working at all. Now, here's the part where I disagree. In order to get on the microphones, it costs money. In order to set up the event to talk to other brothers in the street, it costs money. Even the guys who stand on the corner in purple and scream out the Bible got to get permits. That costs money. So the unfortunate thing is where I disagree. We got too many people who don't have disposable money. One thing I saw with the Hotep brothers, everybody got mad at Sarnetta. But I had to say, wait a minute. Sarnetta is the one who negotiated the building. Sarnetta is the one who put his money to rent the building. You guys didn't help Sarnetta even get the building, yet you want to get on the microphone for free and dominate the mic. That's my point, Green Gorilla. We got too many dudes who want a voice, and I'm not knocking that, but don't want to contribute on the rental of the building to bring the brothers together to talk about the agenda. All they want to do is bully Green Gorilla and get on the mic for 3 hours and not let nobody else speak as if they help pay for the building. Here's my last point. I didn't get nothing out of giving up that 15 G's, but I got I mean, personally, I didn't get nothing out of it. I don't have no kid, but what was happening to other men as a whole was terrible. But here's what I said to the white men in Chicago when we got that. I said, here we are as black men. We had to work with a Republican we don't even agree with to get this shit passed in Chicago, where I don't even live.
Right.
And we had to work with, and I didn't say this on the mic, we had to work with some anti-black racist white men on this agenda to get it for all men. But look how much I had to sacrifice for a place I don't even live, because the people who live there got black men in political positions, but they don't care. They're trying to push women agendas. So I'm going to pass the microphone back to you, but that's my point. My point is you're absolutely right, but we don't have enough dudes at their job willing to go to their boss and say, I need some disposable income. I need some extra income, and therefore I'm tired of just being the fucking janitor. I want to be manager of the janitor. I'm tired of being the warehouse dude here. I want to be the international shipping clerk at this mug. We got too much of that. And that's where the problem is. While the gay folks, they paying their money for the microphones. The women, they getting men to pay their part to rent the building, and then having a woman's only conference, no men allowed. So we got to put that part in the game too. Back to you, Green Gorilla.
Now, before you go, I want to say, look, I didn't mean to be. I apologize.
No, it's all good, brother. You didn't know who I was.
Look, I have righteous indignation about some of the things I've gone through as a man, and I'm not getting to the point where I'm name calling, because I'm giving everybody a voice. Even if I don't agree with you, I believe that you should have a voice.
Applause to you, brother.
So, and thank you for helping to create the space. And, as a man, I can say, okay, I was a little too harsh initially when
all good.
But don't.
What do you think about my point?
I don't have all the answers to all of these questions.
What do you think about my point about the money and renting the building and renting the mics?
So this is what I would say about that. Okay. So the manosphere has done a great job at least creating the conditions in which consciousness can be raised. Okay. But after that, consciousness is nothing without work. It's like faith without works is dead. Right? Where you at, brother?
True.
So one of the components of consciousness raising then becomes organizing, and then becomes trying to find out ways to implement policy along the lines that you did. But then you got to have trust amongst brothers that money is not going to be squandered and put into people's hands that aren't actually doing the work. So at some point, you are exactly right. The manosphere has to move beyond lip service and talking to actually becoming a bona fide lobby with donors, with policymakers, just like one of the brothers said in the chat. We need think tanks, but not only do we need think tanks, we need to be forming coalitions, even with people who might appear to be strange bedfellows to us.
True. But see, here's the problem, though. Let me give you a little peek behind the curtain of the manosphere. Here's why 5 people fell out. I ain't gonna name their names, but here's why. Because one person did it for the love of the brothers. One person appeared to do it for the love, but they really was getting profit. They was looking at the profit they was getting. You had another dude who turned out to be a rapist of young girls. He got kicked out because For him, it was a way to get acknowledgement again as a man. And then you had another guy who just wanted to do what he wanted to do. So all that clashed. And unfortunately, it never went in the direction that it should have went, where the plumber in Michigan is bonding with the plumber in Arizona. The plumber, you got three plumbers in Wisconsin. They should come together as a conglomerate and start going after state contracts. See, all this is what you're talking about, because it generates extra income for us to do this type of stuff. But like I witnessed with the Manosphere 1.0, if we got cats just trying to pay their rent, if we got cats who ain't really living yet, it's hard to work with that, because then we don't get to the point where you want, which is where your little son or your nephew gets to see some benefit when he turns 18. Right now, we just got a lot of people trying to one up each other, trying to disrespect each other. You do have some of us doing the work, but I'm gonna tell you, I've gone to a bunch of $100 ticket events, and when I tell you, I see black men there, but they so weak. They so weak. They let the women run everything, to the point where I had to pull a couple of brothers aside at the buffet. Hey, I see a lot of brothers here, but why are y'all not speaking? Yeah, man, we got to change. I said, but brother, you've been in this for 20 years. Where's the representation for the young man like myself coming in? Yeah. I had 5 conversations like that at $100 ticket event. See, I'm on the front line for you, Green Gorilla. Don't even know you like that. I'm on the front line for myself and the people to come, because it's a strange thing when you see a lot of brothers in political powers and they got the microphone, they got the TV channels. I just interviewed to be on Fox Soul. I'm texting the producer for the past couple of days trying to see which spot on Fox Soul I'm gonna get on. Okay. But see, when I get up there, I'm getting up there naked. I'm getting up there without the marketing support. I'm getting up there. If the white people or the Jews attack me like Nick Cannon, guess what? I ain't got no blackmail dollars behind me to fight that. That's where the problem really comes from, Green Gorilla. Once you get a cat up there, he's naked. The Manosphere got to come through with dollars of protection for marketing, lawyers, all that.
Well, all I can say is we can start that. And let me just say this before I let you go, brother, because I know you got time. Your time is your most valuable asset. But we got a group of scholars who can't be denied. They have credentials and they have a platform and they're knowledgeable and they're becoming part of the Manosphere, and they want to participate in what you guys have created from the ground up. Not to take it over, but to give you voice and to give you credibility. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so they can't just be summarily disregarded and, put off and attacked. Now, we also don't need to have people from the ground up who are participating and who are, going off and doing things like you're talking about doing, and also be behind the scenes. Everybody doesn't have to be up front. We need to organize. And women have been able to do this in a way that black women have been able to do it in a way that black men have not, precisely because they have just latched on to movements that have already been in place. The feminist movement from white women was already taken off. All they had to do was just add in black, and then there they were, and they had a support system. Okay? The same thing with the black LGBTQ people. They had a white LGBTQ movement that was already taken off, and it was already, had mechanisms in place.
And they kicked the black ones out.
They kicked them out, but they use them as tokens in order to push the agenda forward. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm not saying we need to be used, but there are men's rights groups. But see, the problem is the race issue.
True.
However, if black women are able to put their differences aside and use white feminism as a catalyst to improve or enhance their own views and their own political positioning, why can't black men do the same thing?
Matter of fact, can I make you laugh real quick? I had a debate with a black feminist a couple of years ago about some of the stuff I just said to you, and she was getting angry. And I said, "Hold on, sister. Let me ask you a question. If I was to bond with the white man tomorrow and create something called maleism, the same way you're bonding with the white woman to create feminism, how would you feel about that?" She couldn't speak, and you could see the horror in her eyes just bubble over with her just thinking, "Oh shit."
Precisely. So look, I have a problem with race in this United States. I have a deep-seated problem with it because I know the history of it, and I know, the social practices, the institutions, and the policies that stemmed out of it. So I know the history of it genealogically. But at the same time, there's no way to eradicate this in a whole-scale fashion. This has to be a progressive, incremental process that benefits us. And look, I'm not trying to besmirch the reputation of black women. They're just doing what's in their political interest.
Yep.
That's it. And if we don't do what's in our political interest because we're so worried about taking care of the group, but everybody else has left us behind and is no longer concerned about the group, they're only concerned about their own particular interest, then we're being politically naive. We're being stupid.
Well, I am going to say, when people say political interest, just remember, when you get up there, you got to get financially supported. Like if you ever see C.A. Latreille up there, I'm going to tell you, brothers, y'all got to kick in the dollars. If you don't kick in the dollars, I cannot get up there and speak for black sons. Do not assume that a person getting up in front of the microphone is not getting attacked 24/7. And matter of fact, there was a brother who spoke up. I can't remember his name, at a city council meeting. They sat up here and sent the police by his house to sit up here and arrest him as soon as he pulled out of his subdivision, talking about he didn't signal, pulling out of his subdivision onto the street. So you got to understand, this stuff happens when people get up there to speak for black sons, and I'm an opponent for speaking for black sons, but I just want you to know it is a financial protection. Let me put it like that for the people in the chat room. Financial protection from the brothers. Because if I speak for you, if I talk about EEOC, brothers got the highest EEOC for 40 years running. If I do all that, I guarantee they're going to be some people at my door trying to arrest me, trying to get me on some false charges, trying to get me fired, and I'm going to need lawyer money. And the minute I sit up here and have to use my own money and my money start getting depleted, guess what? I'm not going to be on the microphone as much. That's how it works. Thank you for your time, Green Gorilla. And for all the people in the chat room, if you're talking greasy about me personally, get on the microphone and talk about the topic. Don't talk about me. Talk about the topic and what your solutions are. That's how we grow. We don't grow by doing the female thing, by getting on each other. Thank you, Green Gorilla.
Thank you, man. Thank you for participating, and I appreciate you, bro. I'm sorry to have gotten on you at first, but this is like, I'm not doing this for no woman. You know what I'm saying? I'm not doing this for no ass. I'm doing this because this needs to be done. This is work that has to be done for men. I don't want people to have to go through some of the things I've gone through. There's no reason why. We have to start organizing. The brother that came on here, you can come on here and speak your piece, but we're not going to get to ad hominems, man. But we do need to organize, and we do need to evolve, because we can complain all day. We need to get organized. We need to have our own political agenda and start pushing it and developing organizational structures so we can move beyond just talking and get to moving and influencing policy. Because they just recently passed, I think, a legislative bill whereby there's going to be a yearly or an annual discussion about the ways in which black men's lives are impacted in the United States. I forget the congresswoman who started it, but she's a woman spearheaded this. Now, there's going to be money and opportunities to speak related to that initiative. We need to be there, and we need to have an agenda, and we need to have our scholars there and our representatives there speaking on our behalf. But first, we need to work out an agenda amongst ourselves. But here's the kicker to this, right? This is solely for the benefit of men. But what I'm going to argue is this: in the long run, what's beneficial to men is going to be beneficial to the Black community as a whole. And right now, this is what people are lost. They lose sight of the fact of. If everybody's not functioning and flourishing within the Black community, that sets in dysfunction and dis-ease, and it damages the entire organism. I just can't understand what people don't understand about that. I just don't understand how you could leave one segment of your own community to languish and only center yourself and to think that something positive or optimal is going to come out of that. That's ridiculous. And you're right, nameless protagonist. It does. But here's the catch. It's time for that to be done with. And we need to speak to that. And we need to talk to these white men and tell them, like, what are you so afraid of us being able to function for? Why? Why are you so afraid of us functioning and flourishing and thriving? Why? You're losing out on human capital the more you suppress us. We're some of the most inventive people in the world. Let us flourish and function and thrive. We don't even care about these people, man, and trying to dominate and control and be aggressive to them. We just want to live. It's like the old JC song from Reasonable Doubt. Can I live? But to the larger point I'm trying to make. And I want to go back to democracy again. Right? What we have to do is convince a horde of Black people, specifically Black men, that their idea about democracy is flawed because they think democracy is going to the voting booth and voting. And that's what our ancestors died for, to go vote. That's only part of it. It's not chiefly a struggle for desegregation and the ability to vote. That's an exercise in futility. So the first thing we have to do as men in the manosphere, I believe, we have to show the shortcomings of market-based democracy. Voting is not enough. We're not even on the radar. We're not on the agenda. First of all, we have to develop alternatives to the market-based idea of what democracy is. Now, there is an alternative to that. It's called deliberative or participative democracy. It's a viable alternative to the market-based model of democracy. It is. But you can't rest secure in that form of democracy either, because at the end of the day, deliberation is just a phase of democracy. But see, here's the thing. Here's the kicker. Right now, everybody is refusing to listen to us candidly and in earnest. The politically correct politics now is to decenter and to marginalize Black men. That is the political agenda right now. So if they don't want to listen, we got to force them to listen. They got to be forced to listen to us. You don't want to listen, you got to be forced to listen. Bottom line, if a woman co-ops a march, a movement that we created, you got to get booted out if you're not trying to help us out. If you're not trying to help us and to deal with our issues and what's going on with us, if you don't have time to listen to what we're going through and to listen to our pain and what's going on with us, but we got to listen to you and to interpolate everything that you got going on with you, fuck that. That's not game theory. That's not the catalyst to having an optimal relationship with anybody on an interpersonal level, much less a social level. Nameless protagonist, what's good, brother? Welcome to the show, man.
Family, how you doing today? I appreciate you letting me up here.
Go ahead, my brother. What's good? Glad to have you back, man. And look, brother, support the channel, man. Thank you. And also, I want to give a shout out to my brother, Michael Green. And again, Meach and Warren Thomas for hitting me on the Cash App. But go ahead, my brother, Nameless. Talk to me.
Family, this is exactly why people like you, Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, and Dr. Tommy Curry are absolutely critical, because people are comfortable taking these snapshots of the current moment and, in a clear lack of insight, fail to acknowledge the fact that everything they see in that picture came from somewhere. And every common denominator, the point you can always trace this back to, is intersectional feminism and the creation of the gynocracy. When you have actual policy that props these things up and takes advantage of being able to warp and distill the culture, and you take the fact that we don't have a amalgamous nation slash ethnicity in the United States, we have multiple ethnicities that fall subject to classifications that we call race, because it's just a classification and caste system. There's no difference on the political level. And when you take that and further break that down to how feminism has created a gender component, social dominance theory makes it very clear that the outgroup male is the one that gets hit with the double negative, contrary to all rhetoric you have. And we get mitigated with our presence in this system with this word minority, because it creates this line where it will acknowledge Black women off the premise that they're women, but it will only place Black men in this giant ambiguous amalgamation of Black people. And as a result, we get nothing out of the political system. The only way anybody in this country has ever gotten anything outside of maybe what's considered the standard basis are individuals who have created an agenda predicated on what their needs are from their group. Everybody has an interface to interact with the internet, an operating system, if you will. And Black men have been the only ones, well, Black people as an aggregate, but Black men in particular, have not had an operating system to navigate the political landscape. We don't have an economic base to remain competitive, and we stay subject to it on the negative end of it because we're Black men. We don't have a political or legal basis to step into it, because in the legal system, we're disproportionately hit as a result of being Black men, our overrepresentation in the prison population. Again, Black men. When it comes to the actual enforcement of the law, we have the most minute footprint, even in areas where we're the majority. Again, as Black men, you go down to the media presence. We don't have any narrative that even places us in a fictional story without having to attach another agenda to it, usually something with the acronym associated with it, by virtue of simply being Black men. We don't even have anything in media that is on our own volition and that comes with an agenda. It is critical that we have people like yourself, Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, and books that Tommy Curry is putting out that really highlight this, because it's the only way we can come up with a counter rhetoric. I don't know why people don't understand this, but the only conclusion I can come to is that their understanding of reality has been filtered through a gynocratic disposition. And so the very formula that they're using may be the right formula, but the variables are tampered with. And they're compromised by this term gynocracy. Until we can sit down and really undo the damage that that's caused, we can't even begin to use formulas that everybody else is using to actually solve the problem, because we're busy being told that somehow we're patriarchs in a community that we never were able to even build, let alone have authority in. But we still have to pay and uphold the responsibility that comes with authority. It's gaslighting by definition.
You know what, nameless protagonist? I agree with you 100%, and I think that you're pretty good at articulating your ideas and thoughts just as well as I am. And we need people like you, just like you say we need people like me and Dr. Tia Johnson and Dr. Tommy Curry. So stay on your grind and be able to make a contribution because, you help frame the discussion as well. See, look, I'm a democratic theorist, okay? And let me just be honest here. I don't have a problem with women being able to have their say, but I have a profound problem with Black women not allowing Black men to speak to their own issues and then putting upon us that negative stigmatization of being rapists, abusers, and some sort of malevolent patriarchs seeking to oppress and dominate them. I can't deal with that kind of conversation anymore. And you're right. We need policies. We need an ideology. We need a political orientation that deals solely with our own issues. Period. Now, if you, at some point, we can bring the interests of the community all together and tie them together again, all well and good. But at the current moment, we have been marginalized and set apart from the conversation, pushed to the periphery. That happens no more. We need our own perspectives. We don't even have a Black male perspective, a Black masculinist perspective. And the scholars are developing one right now. It's coming. We will be quiet no more. We don't need permission to speak. Thank you so much, my brother, nameless protagonist, for contributing.
Absolutely, family. Thanks for having me up.
Thank you. Brother Meach, how are you, man? I'm adding you to the screen. How are you, sir?
All right. How about yourself there, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you?
All right. So, hey, first I wanted to ask. I try. I have different channels that I like to support brothers like yourself that are doing the good work, doing the Lord's work. Is there any other outlet that you're on, like Patreon or something, where I can sign up and support you on a regular and just have it to where it comes out on a regular basis every month?
Well, at the current moment, I don't have that, but I can set it up because I do have a Patreon page. I just haven't pushed any content to it. Like this is my first 3 months doing this. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's not like I've been around forever, and I'm a newbie to social media and to YouTube and to content provision. So I'm going through growth stages, and then I'm making a transition in my life from one spot to a next. To another rather, and so just give me good time. But also YouTube is set up a system whereby you can add members to your channel and different kinds of processes like you just mentioned to be set up and established. So just give me time, my good brother, and I'm working on that. Is there anything you would like to say?
Let me say this first. I have a motto. I'm starting every day with a little bit of common sense, right? We have people that there seems to be, and people go whole hog with this for the majority when it comes to the Black community and Black men especially, right? To where there's research with no common sense approach to the research. So basically reading for the sake of reading, but not putting it together, right? Or everything is just going to be basic street knowledge, but not doing the research that's going to tell you how you got there. Do you know what I mean? So What you're doing is a perfect example of melding common sense with research. That's why it's so informative. Otherwise, it would just be data points, which don't add up to anything. Like you said earlier, a bunch of talking but not saying anything, right? So that's the way we need to start. Black men need to start approaching these things. The old saying that you'll notice here in society that the old popular sayings, they don't say them very much anymore because those actually gave you a northern star, right? So, hey, follow the money. How often do you actually hear that on big media stations, unless they're going after somebody, but just in common everyday life, right? Like you guys were saying earlier, you look at the alphabet community, you look at everyone else, they have money behind them. And that's how you get things done. We're not always, and we don't have to agree on everything as brothers. There are some things we believe wholeheartedly on. We can start there. I don't need you to be a Christian or a Muslim, right? Frankly, I don't even care if you're gay. If we have this thing we agree on, then we can put our money and our energy towards there. So
Right.
is that we have to start baby steps. Do you get what I mean? We can make baby steps because we're not, of course, there's always going to be some bickering, but we have to start moving forward because everybody else is moving forward. Everybody else is moving forward, and a lot of them, there's a lot of loud speaking out here in politics. You see it on the channel. They got their platforms. There's a lot of speaking, but most of the actual work, most of the actual movement is being done behind the scenes, and they're using all this loud talk to distract us.
Right.
You get what I
Right.
mean?
I
So
do.
that's what I wanted to say, man. Is people need to start taking that approach, man. Use some common sense to do some research so that you can actually start moving forward and stop with all the bickering, which isn't getting us anywhere. You get what I mean? Otherwise, keep up the good work, man. I'm gonna keep on supporting you.
All right. Thank you so much, my brother Meech, and have a good, safe travel. It sounds like you're in your car, man. Be safe, brother.
All right.
All right. So look, let me just say this. Democracy to me is a process. Okay? Now, I don't know if you know what that means, but this is what I mean by that. Now, one could argue democracy is the rule of the mob. But to me, that's not what democracy actually is. To me, democracy is constitutive of justice in human affairs when all citizens recognize the creative and normative powers of all other citizens. And when every person is able to effectively order the terms of their common life together. Let me repeat this. Its constitutive democracy is in human affairs, of justice in human affairs, when all citizens acknowledge and recognize the normative powers of all the other citizens. And when every person is able to effectively order the terms of their life together. It's an ideal that orders interactive processes. It's a moral or political event directed towards inclusion and fairness in human affairs. That's what it is. It's not an institution. It's not a form of government. It's not a procedure. It's not, right? It's not those things. But it is true that a procedure, an institution, or government can be more or less arranged to reflect the democratic ideal. And this is why I define it this way. I'm a scholar and I define it this way precisely because I do not want to lay claim to having developed any concrete democratic form because democracy is episodic. It's not always there. You don't always have it. It's an ideal that doesn't always obtain. You get moments and flashes of it. Now, the question is, why do I say it's episodic? It's not just episodic, it's also modal. It's not always there. It doesn't always obtain. And when it does obtain, it doesn't always manifest in the same form. It's exceptional, democracy is. Because it's not the normal means by which human beings govern themselves. It's just not. Everybody's not always included in assigning themselves duties and obligations related to decision-making processes. It's just not that way. Should it be that way? Yes. But it's not always that way. Layman's terms. Democracy is a decision-making process, but more than anything else, it is a process where people are having conversations with each other and they're able to have an impact on what the ultimate and final decision is. Doesn't mean that we have to go with what you say. but it means that you have had a critical and a vital impact over the decision by actually listening to what the fuck you have to say. Imagine being in a room and you're talking and nobody's listening to you. That's how black men feel right now. And we ain't even saying nothing. We could be in the room, but everybody already has the predisposition to not listen to us because of, the patriarchy or something like that. Male privilege, penis privilege, whatever the case may be. Oppressor, abuser, rapist, whatever the case may be. Now, you don't have to go with what black men say, but to exclude the man from the process of decision making altogether, predicated upon principle, that is anti-democratic. That is oppressive, man. Those are the layman's terms that I'm trying to speak with you with right there. And I say it's episodic because mainly or mostly people rule from the top down. And I'm not saying there's not a place for top-down leadership. But I'm saying top-down leadership can leave blind spots in that leadership. You need to gain intel from people on the ground if you actually dedicated to improving not just what's good for you, but what's good for the whole. It ain't just about you. This is the one thing that people got to understand. Black men understand this perfectly because from birth, we are reared to look out for people besides just ourselves. You were made to be in deference to others, specifically women. Let the girl go first. Give her the chair. Tip your hat. Take off your hat in the house. Always be respectful to women. You think women are taught the same kind of respect for men in that way? Not at all. That used to be taught. It's not taught now. But men have been taught to think beyond themselves. In fact, the concept of manhood in and of itself encapsulates thinking beyond oneself. That's just a fact. The very idea embedded within the idea of manhood is risking your life, taking responsibility for others and being accountable for others in a way that other people are not. Now, one can argue that, on the inverse, motherhood means to do the same thing, but with children. Because a woman, if she's being a good mother, she can't just be looking out for herself. She's got to look after, if she's being a good mother, she's looking out for the interest of her children. But here's the problem. I think we have a problem with remoteness. See, right now, everybody's looking for what's good for us right now. Right now. There's no thinking, no long-term, no long-range thinking. Everything for us is living off of our wits. That's how Black people have to think. We're forced to deal with our cunning in order to make decisions about what's best for us. That's dysfunctional. That is dysfunctional. If every moment you're thinking from wit to end, that's not leaving time for growth. That's living in stress. You constantly facing a crisis and you have to manage the crisis right then and there. I mean, I understand. Like some leaders take on that role and that duty to do that. But then there's a time at which that leader has to pull back and get some rest and relaxation time. You can't be exposed to stress continuously and expect to be able to make good decisions. You cannot. You cannot. So that's why I say The civil rights movement was a democratic movement. It happened at a specific point in time, and it showed up in a specific kind of way. It showed up in the form of marches, sit-ins, boycotts, so on and so forth. Now, my thing is this: democracy might have to show up differently for black men than it did in the past. The Haitian Revolution was democracy. For those men and those women who were in a state of bondage that freed themselves, that was democracy. It was an episode of democracy where people were able to tie together their ideas about their common life. I'm trying to educate you on what democracy is the way I see it. Now, you can challenge it, but I can tell you, as far as I'm concerned, going to a voting booth, tabulating your fixed interest in a box, and then going home and go watch TV, that ain't democracy. You got to do more. You got to put more work in if you want to actually have some sort of active engagement with what goes on in your life. That's not enough. The wealthy people are doing way more than that. They got their hand, like the brother said, they got their hands in these people's pockets, and therefore their voice is in their ear. We got to organize. Unfortunately, black people used to be organized. But you know what? Black people took a deep breath. Whoo, we done overcome. We thought we did. But why do I say democracy is episodic, meaning it happens at a specific point in time, and it's modal, meaning it changes up? Because, and I try to use this analogy so you can understand it, if you're playing a football game, or a baseball game, or a basketball game, it doesn't matter, it can be any type of game, and you're playing it one way, and you're successful in the first half. Then the team comes back and he figures out what kind of strategy you're using in the first half, and they find a way to countermand it in the second half, and they win the game. That's what democracy has to look like for oppressed people, because the people in power are going to change the game. They ain't going to keep playing the same way. As soon as you figure out how to countermand it, they're going to come up with another counter strategy. It's playing chess, yo. It's playing chess, bruh. This ain't checkers. This is a calculated, protracted game. And this is why I find the feminist ideology, which is rigid, is fixed, is static, I find it to be absolutely nonsensical, because they feel like they've already figured it out. Like you got the game already figured out when you start playing chess. You can't figure the game out when you start playing chess. You can develop a strategy, but you don't know what the game is going to look like 5-6 moves down the line. You don't know. How is he going to push this pawn up here? Is it going to be on the, the 3? Is it going to be on the 5? Is he going to move the knight? Like, is he going to move the bishop? Like, you don't know. So you got to adjust to what the other team is doing. But my problem is I'm not going to be used on the pawn. That's got the fucking game fucked up. Right now, you got the queen on the board thinking that the game is all about them. You fucking kill the king, the game is over with. Or maybe you consider the game of chess patriarchal or some shit like that. But the whole point is to protect the king. You fucking kill the king, you kill the men, you fucking who is the next line of defense? Some fucking Amazons? Come on, man. Like this, I just hate to see motherfuckers be politically naive. And then this is another thing that people get fucked up about the civil rights movement. They think it was just a movement in which people were marching and passively protesting. Man, that's the dumbest, most naive bullshit in the world. Stupid dumb. Because right there with them people protesting and marching, MLK hired the deacons for defense. These are men who have been in the military, man, and showed up to protect them people with guns, man. Go look at it. Go look for it. The deacons for defense. The police didn't just pull away every time just because of the goodness of their heart. But then also, while this movement was taking place and transpiring, we were immersed in the Cold War. A lot of people from the Soviet Union were funding the communist movement and these black revolutionary movements in order to try to jockey for position on a global scale. These are things people don't really actually know about the civil rights movement. They just think it was some moral movement, a purely pacifist movement. There were a lot of moving parts to that movement. And this is what I don't understand. How could you be on a board? Imagine the queen going out on the board and that's the only fucking piece that moves. You know what ends up happening if you play the game like that? The queen can move and move and move and move and move and make herself eliminate certain problems here and there. But eventually, if that piece is the only piece being moved, she gon' get fucked. You got 64 squares on the board. You got 8 ranks and 8 files. I'm just using an analogy. You got to use every piece on the board. Right now, we just using one piece on the board. It's ridiculous to me. I just don't understand it in terms of strategy. I don't get it. Unless, of course, the strategy is to only look after your own self-interest. And I have no problem with people looking out for their own self-interest, especially if they are oppressed, because oppression in and of itself, if you work to get beyond it, it is a universal interest. It's a public interest to get rid of oppression. But don't minimize my oppression. Don't call me your oppressor when you're doing the same shit to us that you're doing that's being done to you. You can't do that. You cannot call the pot can't call the kettle black and say that we're oppressors because we're beating the shit out of and raping the shit out of women. That's the only thing they got on us is this rape shit and this abuser shit. But social scientific research, which is empirically based, is demonstrating more and more and increasingly that women are just as violent and as fucking sexually predatory as men. Just as sexually predatory. When you start to frame things differently and you talk about coercion as it pertains to sexual assault and rape, then you get a whole different picture. When you talk about made to penetrate, then you got a whole different conversation. And then when you start talking about domestic violence in terms of social scientific research, you get a whole new ball game. See, a lot of times when I talk to people get things confused. See, let me tell you this. When you make a proposition to somebody in relation to a claim you're making about what's true or what's false, I'm gonna just draw upon the philosophical tradition right here. I only say there's 2 types of propositions you can make. You say I'm making the wrong argument? I don't know what you're talking about, but the whole point is you can't call people oppressive if you're doing the same thing that you're relating oppression to. That's contradictory. You cannot do it. If we got pathology in our community, we need to try to find a way to mitigate the pathology. You can't do it by solving one part of the equation, is what I'm saying. The reality of the situation is this. There's only two types of propositions you can make. You can make relations of ideas propositions and matter-of-fact propositions. That's all you can do. Now let me break this down for you so you can understand it. Let me break this down to you so you can understand it. You can make a claim based upon an idea or an argument based upon nothing but ideas, or you can make an argument based on facts, matters of fact. So a lot of times people make arguments that they think are matters of fact or based on like empirical data when they're really actually just using or operating on ideas. Period. Like for instance, I'm gonna give you a relations of idea argument. Johnny is a bachelor. A bachelor is an unmarried male. Johnny is a bachelor. That means Johnny is an unmarried male. That's a simple argument. You don't have to go out in nature to look around and figure the shit out. All you got to do is use your reason to figure it out. If a bachelor is an unmarried male, and if Johnny is a bachelor, that means that Johnny is an unmarried male. It's an argument. A lot of guys think that they have like a mastery of argumentation. They don't even know the rules of inference. It's a whole bunch of them. Modus ponens, modus tollendo tollens, hypothetical syllogism, disjunctive syllogism, De Morgan's theorem, simplification, commutation. I mean, there's so many of them. And I've spoken on this shit a long time ago. See, here's the thing. I've already said this, and I'm going to say this again. Any group of men that continue to deride other groups of men and call them innate criminals, you're making a matter-of-fact statement. But the question is, how can you prove that there's just a select group of pookies and that they're innately flawed and pathological? How can you make that other than through relying on subcultural violence theory? How can you do it? And then if you do want to argue that there is a segment of the Black population that is pathological beyond the point of rehabilitation, what the fuck you gonna do with it? What are you gonna do with them? What you gonna do with Pookie? Most people who are Pookies, let me tell you something about violent crime in the Black community. People sociological data and crime statistics. But we still having this argument about how we need to purge the community of undesirable Black men without looking at the environmental factors or anything, or what contributes to this environment of pathology, the behavior or the creation of Pookies. Because I can tell you, most of the Pookies are coming from the ghetto, right? Most of the Pookies you find in the ghetto, right? Well, who manufactured and created the ghetto? Black people by their natural dysfunction? That sounds like some white people shit to me. You can argue the inverse or the converse of that argument. But that ain't even an argument. Violence exists everywhere in the world. No particular demographic has a fucking monopoly on violence. I'm sick and tired of hearing that bullshit argument about violence. I'm sick of that shit. I'm sick, especially coming from the mouth of Black men who should know better. Study some fucking social scientific literature on this shit. We keep going in circles. Everybody wants to distance themselves from Black men. Even Black men want to distance themselves from Black men instead of fucking solving the problem head on. What you think you're going to gain acceptability from white people when you finally round up and execute and eliminate the wrong Black people? What type of shit is that? I'm just sick and tired of hearing that shit from Black men who arguing about the Pookies because they can't get pussy or something. We got to stop that, man. We have to stop that. You got to stop it. All you're doing is contributing. You using the same fucking argument that these motherfucking racists are using. At the end of the day, it's the same damn problem. And you're right, it is the case that single families are one of the leading causes of this problem. We got to look at the environmental factors and how to solve them. And we got to do so using empirical research. That's the whole point. We can issue proclamations of morality all day long, but we have to experiment. I'm a naturalist philosopher, man. I'm a pragmatist. How do we solve the problem? How do we experiment with the environment to figure out if we can create conditions in which people aren't created that are dysfunctional? These people have created dysfunction for us. You create a bad condition, you got homelessness, you got dysfunction, single parent homes. We already know that 70% of the people who are convicted for violent crimes come from single parent families, man. We already know this. People who come from single families, man, are going to probably more than likely be divorced themselves and going to have single families themselves. We're single mothers, man. I mean, what other family structure do we have in this bitch other than single mother family? I mean, I'm just keeping it 100. So this to me is a problem. Look, let me tell you, people don't understand what freedom actually is. That's why I'm having this conversation about political strategy. But first, you got to do political theory in order to develop a political strategy. We don't even focus on the ideals that we so-called are governed by. But we got to get our shit together, man. And we got to argue. And here's the one thing I wanted to say about democracy before I go, because we can get on tangents. Okay? We can go on tangents. Democracy, and I'm quoting from a brother named Sheldon Wolin, he's a white dude, but I think what he says about democracy makes a lot of sense. Democracy in the late modern world cannot be a complete political system. And given the awesome potentialities of modern forms of power and what they exact of the social and natural world, it ought not be hoped or striven for. Democracy needs to be reconceived as something other than a form of government, as a mode of being that is conditioned by bitter experience, doomed to succeed only temporarily, but is recurrent as a possibility as long as the memory of the political survives. The experience of democracy is the witness, is the realization that the political mode of existence is such that it can be and is periodically lost. Democracy is a political moment, perhaps the political moment, when the political is remembered and recreated. It's a rebellious moment that may assume revolutionary, destructive proportions or may not. So going to my own words, democracy is episodic. It doesn't mean it always obtains, but this shouldn't be discouraging. It ought to be inspiring, because what it actually is doing is signaling that when injustice becomes too much, too intolerable, the most lowly of citizens can rise up and create new cultural patterns, new frameworks, new ways of thinking about things, new ways of doing things. And it's episodic. It's not always there, but the hope that it can be, because it has been, should be in our minds. It's modal, meaning it manifests in no definite form. Just as the forms of human interaction and decision-making are fluid, oppression is a fluid thing too. Domination is fluid. So democracy, it needs critical theory. We need to be critical thinkers. We need to describe what's happening, and we need to prescribe action in order to meet the oppression that we are facing. We need theoretical and practical proposals. A brother just came on today. Let's pool our money together and create a lobby. Let's talk to some different groups who already have men's interest in mind and combine and join our efforts with those. You see, one of the things people need to understand is that you don't need to have consensus. You might try to aim for it, but you don't need consensus. We're not going to always agree, but we might have overlapping consensus. We might have intersecting points of consensus. We need our own agenda, man. T. Hassan Johnson has been developing an agenda. He's been developing one. Always danger everywhere, man. Oppression is everywhere. And things that are right can go wrong. We are a public that is not aware of itself, and our interests are not being taken seriously out here in these streets, man. We need to get our game together. We need to get our critical theory together, which is happening, and we need to make prescriptions on what to do in order to create a positive program in order to work out a cure. But it's also, look, Dr. Johnson does a great job, right? Dr. Curry does a great job. Okay? At understanding that we need to frame issues specifically that happen to men. We need a new frame, and they're creating the frame. This is what critical thinking is. It's criticizing ideals. What's Newton's third law? And then I'm gonna sign out of here because I done already been 2 hours in. What is Newton's third law? I'm waiting for the answer. I want you to tell me what it is. Equilibrium. But how? How do we get that equilibrium? I need to hear it in words, man. Formally stated, here is what it is, man. For every action, there's an equal and an opposite reaction. Bam. There you go, Shaft Brown. Every action has an equal and an opposite reaction. Bottom line. At some point, somebody got to do this work. The work's going to get done, whether we do it or not, because a move has been made against us. But for every action, there's an equal and an opposite reaction. Okay, well, you say we're abusers. What about the abuse you exact on the community and the family? I mean, you say, we're patriarchal, you're gynocratic. Oh, you say we're rapists? You molest little boys. You say we're oppressors? You're kicking us out of the family. You say we're liars? We're saying you lying about the kids you got. Half of them kids ain't even ours. We need some DNA testing. We have to be able to get control over our kids too. That's oppressive to not be part of the family structure. You say you hate patriarchy. Well, if patriarchy is what you're against, but you creating a system whereby women had the same kind of power that patriarchs had, then it's just as unjust. We got to worry about our interests, man. Straight black males. Gay people can join in if they want to, but it has to be primarily straight black males because they already done set up a coalition against us. They already done sided with the intersectional feminists. So, at some point we might be able to get this together, man, to create some parity and some, some solidarity amongst our people again. But right now, I don't know. But if you choose on acting ugly and being an ass, we might have to step off. It's like a bad relationship. I ain't got to sit here and fuck with you and hear your mouth. It's a whole big ass world out here. I don't have to live it with you. And to be perfectly honest, look, here's the deal. Black men can shut all this political bullshit down if they wanted to, because the Democratic Party ain't doing shit for black men. Nothing at fucking all. Nothing. Zero. If black men wanted to shut down the vote, the voting block is over. It's done. They'll never be able to win. Democrats will never be able to win again. None. If black men say fuck it, done. It's a donezo. They need our participation. We can shut it all down, and they know it. But if you're going to go your own way, which is what they decided to do, okay then, all right, it becomes a law of nature then. You ever heard game theorists? I talked about game theory earlier. Tit for tat. It's been one of the most successful strategies in nature. Animals use it. Biological organisms use it. Bacteria use it. Tit for tat. Go look it up. Evolutionary biology and tit for tat. They use it. You start off cooperating. However, if one of the persons defects, you defect. You play the next round with defection. If they cooperate the next round, you cooperate. That's how the game works. That's how we need to treat these women out here. If you want to play nice, we'll play nice. You don't want to play nice, we're on our own. We're defecting. Period. You don't give us what we want, we're out. We're trying to play nice, but you don't want to play nice, guess what? Defection. You want to cooperate? We'll cooperate. But we need to see a sign that you're cooperating. Right now, we have not seen a sign that they're willing to cooperate. It's called tit for tat. And look, let me say this. Again, peep the game. I told you, there's only two kinds of propositions that you can make. You can make a relations of idea proposition and have an argument to support it, which you can use through deductive reasoning and so on and so forth. Or you can make a matters of fact proposition, which you have to prove through empirical evidence. A lot of times people make arguments about what's possible, what's impossible in empirical evidence, and they have no argument for it. They have no data to support it. They just make an is-ought fallacy. It can't be done, or that'll be impossible, or how do we know that? We don't know. See, we have to bring logic into this, man. And look, when you make a relations of idea argument, you're relying on deductive reasoning. When you make a matter of fact proposition, you're relying on inductive reasoning. related to it. I know this shit. You can have all true premises in an inductive argument and still get a false conclusion. Did you know that? So let's not go there. All I'm saying is if black men have a concerted agenda and bring consciousness to the masses of black men, and we start being practical as opposed to being idealistic, if we stop being cooperative when people aren't cooperating with us and start looking out for ourselves for a change, shit'll change. But having said all that, I'm about this thing, man. We can argue around a circle for days, but I appreciate you being here. Let's get this work started, man. Peace.